continue to trust your employees, whether or not they're in the office or at home. I don't think there's a rush to get back to the office, and I don't think there's a desire for people to rush to get back in the office. It's really about, your customers. If you can support your customers from home and your people work better from home, and that'll free up a lot of money, I think, for the organization as well.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Aishwarya at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM, that's specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and channel that receives more than 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Dr. Cindy Young. She's the founder and CEO of CJ Young Consulting LLC. Her primary focus is on empowering employees and their organizations using the key tenets of knowledge management. Her 25 years of program management experience and knowledge management expertise goes a long way in supporting organizations and workforces. She holds expertise on knowledge management, operational excellence, organizational leadership, and much more. We're excited to get into conversation about it. Welcome to peopleHum, Dr. Cindy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you. Dr. Cindy, you've had kind of a wonderful journey, and you are now the founder and CEO of CJ Young Consulting. So could you tell us a little bit about your company and probably start with some of the unique work that you're doing, and what exactly is knowledge management?
Okay. Well, my company, I started in February of this year. And so what my goal is to help organizations use knowledge management to help work with their teams and support their customers in a better way of sharing what they know instead of keeping it to themselves, to better organization as a whole. And what knowledge management is, it's knowing what to do with the information or the data that you have, whether it's in your people or in your machines, to know how to progress forward. So I'm looking at this as a very important aspect that a lot of companies think costs a lot of money to do, but really you can do it by communicating daily processes or communicating changes. And it's really about building trust within your organization.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's quite interesting, actually. So how do you say that, what's your take on knowledge management in, when there's an environment of remote working and everybody's kind of locked up, in their own places? How do you think knowledge management would work then?
Well, the cloud is very helpful. The cloud enables everybody to look at the same information and same knowledge as long as they have access to it. So when people went remote, it became very important for the different organizations to ensure that people had access to the knowledge, and that they had a plan in place of where to put stuff when they captured new knowledge, and how to get their teams to work together. So you have these conference call like this one, like Zoom, and then they also have Skype and Microsoft Teams, all those different capabilities. And really just it's it's not as good as being in person, but it's not as bad either, because you're saving money on travel, where you can spend that money investing in your team rather than on the travel itself. And you can also reach out to your customers easily with that, if your customers are along the same lines of using communication like that. So it was hard, I think, at the beginning for a lot of companies to transfer, but there's a lot of companies out there who use it all the time as it is. And when you look at it that way, it doesn't seem that difficult at all. I think the hard part is when you have people stuck in their ways that don't want to change. It just makes it more difficult for organizations to get people on board with the new procedures. But I've enjoyed it.
Sure, absolutely. I also think that knowledge management, I'm not sure about the awareness levels in organizations,
Mhm.
but do you think that, leaders are really equipped with the right tools and techniques and process knowledge of how do you actually manage all of this?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily knowing how to manage all the knowledge as, the awareness of who needs what when. If you have a manager and they have their team, all remote, they need to know they have to communicate with their teams a little more than they would be able to do a drive-by on their desks or in their cubicle area. So when their team knows something, they need to ensure everybody else on our team knows it as well, and they can make decisions based off that. But you can also stay ahead of that by giving people some pre-planned responses on how they need to act. If they get a customer who wants something and they know what's going on, they need to share it. They can send out a quick email, or there may be a status board online somewhere. And that's really what leadership needs to do. They need to be aware of who has what and to know how to reach out and get it. But with the remote workforce, they have a lot of challenges because they're not just sitting at home by themselves working. They didn't just move their office. They have their families and their pets around. So that becomes a little more challenging too, because you have to respect the fact that they're not just working. They've got other things going on.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, I think, when we're remote working, there's just so much happening in the background. And it's just so
Yes.
hard to focus. Yeah, I can totally resonate with that. But
Hmm.
I also think that knowledge is kind of scattered in so many places. For example, if I have communication tools in my organization, I also, for example, have an HR system. So I could have different tools
Hmm.
where knowledge is kind of spread out. So what is your take on that? Is there kind of a certain process where I can have all information consolidated in one place so that it's kind of better managed as such?
Well, like I was saying, you got the cloud. A lot of us, we can't put thumb drives and stuff in our computers, so we have to rely on the cloud. And the cloud, it have to have the good firewalls there. So your IT people have to be involved in that, and your management's got to help you set up a process of, how often you upload changes. Do you work on a shared portal, or do you work on your desktop and then upload it? And that's a big challenge, because a lot of people don't want, they strive for perfection, so they want to be able to get it done perfectly and then share it. Whereas if you share it as you're working, you're going to get more people, more thoughts, and a little more expertise that comes with the knowledge of working the processes. So it's really a process in itself. And if the organization puts together a process of what their rhythm is, what their battle rhythm is for meetings and for projects, and they get everybody to understand how that works, that's really what will help the organization get through this.
Got it. So I think what you're
Hmm.
saying is that there should be a lot of emphasis on the process of
Hmm.
a lot of these things, which probably is one of the reasons why teams fail, just because they don't have a proper process in place, or their leaders don't give it so much importance, right?
Hmm. Right. Process improvement doesn't have to be a challenge, but people do have to work with it in order to change it, and it's got to change as needed. As the organic work at the organization, as well as the customers, they support the changes, and with the changes, they can become permanent, or they could be temporary for that one person or one team.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of has to be just dynamic, and it has to kind of flow with,
Hmm.
what changes you are bringing about in your organization as well. Which
Yes.
also kind of brings me to, another point when I see you do have, kind of expertise in this area, organizational leadership.
Hmm.
So what do you think are kind of the common mistakes that a lot of leaders make when it kind of comes to organizational leadership?
Well, one of the big um, areas I see is that they put out words, they put out direction, but they don't always want feedback on it. So leaders have to trust that their people, they hired their people, so they need to trust they hired them because they have expertise that they bring with them. And if they have a better idea or a different way of doing things, there may not be a problem with doing that, unless somewhere in the customer's guidance or a statement of work it says that they have to do certain things. So, the leaders have to recognize their team does come with some value, and they know what they're doing. So be open to listening to your team. Don't assume that because you're in a leadership role or you're managing a team that you know more, because that's most often not the case.
Yeah.
So,
That's actually quite enlightening. I kind of do think that these are kind of small things that probably leaders miss out on, just kind of communicating and making it more transparent as a system. But
hmm
I think that probably really empowers workforces, and that leads to, better built teams and more
it
success,
does.
right?
hmm Yeah, I mean, my last job, I had I think 25, 30 people working for me, and they all had their own ideas about how they thought a process should go because they worked it. And as their leader and manager, I just needed an end state to be met. So I trusted them to make decisions, and as long as it fit in the statement of work with the customer, I was good with that. And I can only think one time we didn't work out as we planned, but the rest of the time worked out pretty well.
Yes. And I think that's because, you trusted them with their
hmm
decisions. You kind of, had a mindset. I think it's a mindset change that requires
Yes.
you to just be somebody that can dissolve and kind of take into consideration others' decisions and viewpoints as well.
Right, and we communicate a lot too. I would have talks every couple weeks with the entire team so they could hear what they were doing on each other's projects. But also, I had an open door policy where they could call me or come in because they didn't work in the same building I worked in. They worked on the customer site. So a lot of that communication was very important to understanding why they're making decisions they're making. But like I said, unless it was against a statement of work, I had no problem with the way they were doing it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's excellent. So, do you also think, Dr. Cindy, that workforce empowerment, right? How do you kind of drill it down into steps, right? I mean, maybe you're a startup, maybe you're a
Mhm.
huge organization. Does does the approach kind of differ in these settings, or is there just like one path to it?
Well, I went from a company that had about 500 people to now I'm at I have my own business, but I'm also at a company that has 37,000 people. And in the only real difference I see between the two companies is the amount of processes they have. And, as a smaller company, we had processes that worked that some of them were legally based and others were just how they worked with our teams. And then the company I'm at now, we have large processes because they have to encompass so many different areas, so many different people, and different ways of doing things because we're not just in one center, path to go down. So I, I really, in the end, it doesn't really matter the big company, little company, but there are slight differences between the two.
Mhm. Got it. Also, do you think that especially now that we are probably through a lot of the pandemic kind
Mhm.
of environment, we've gone through so much, uh, you know do you think that the mindset of a lot of these leaders have changed, and do they look at empowerment, workforce empowerment, in a different way, in a different new light?
Definitely. I definitely think that the mindset is a little bit different. They've realized, people who are used to working in office space got to realize that people working from home are just as effective. I mean, they're not meeting with the customers as much and they're not seeing each other face to face, but the work is getting done. So that is not changing. Now, what's going to be challenging is when people do want to go back to office or when companies want to have their people back in the office. There are going to be some people that don't want to go back to office, and that's going to be hard because you're either going to have to unfortunately let them go if they don't want to come back to office and you need the person in office, or if you want to keep them remote, how do you get them to work with the rest of the team, because that may put a team dynamic in place that is not very desired. I mean, people in the office who want to work from home and other people who are working from home that don't want to change what they're doing right now.
Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of them are just comfortable with, the mindset of having a hybrid kind of a model where I'm
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with going to office, a couple of days a week, but I just want to stay home. So I think those dynamics are kind of like really changing, and they're changing real time. So do you think like, leaders need to be self-aware in this process, or need to kind of recheck their processes now? And how do you think they should move on from here? What do you think is the future?
Um, that's a good question. I think that leaders need to look at first of all what's changed. If somebody's gotten used to working from home and they've changed their home life based on working from home, you know, or if they have children that are home and they don't go back to school right away, what are they going to do? Are they going to continue to let them from home or let them work from home? Are they going to change how the money works? Are they going to change how the different jobs are set up? So it's really, I think it's really going to be an individual basis for each area of the business as well as business as a whole. I've seen a lot of jobs go totally remote, but then people do get disconnected from the culture of the company.
Yeah,
And then I've seen like me, I don't have a child at home, and so it's a little easier for me to work from home than it would be for somebody who has their school age children.
yeah.
So sorry, I have a cat on
That's
my lap.
okay.
So that's my only thing. It's the pets get in the way. So but it's I don't know. It's gonna be different. I don't think all jobs are gonna go back to working in person, but I do think that we need to have some people in the office if they want to have, you know, uh, I don't know, if they want to have some sense of telling their customers, yes, we're this big company and this is where we are. It may be, how the customer perceives the ability of the business to do business. Whether they have people in the office or all remote.
Yeah, yeah, that makes so much sense. I think that, all around you're just kind of seeing suddenly everybody scrambled to operationalize things in such a different way, right? I mean,
Hmm.
all of their, SOPs and standard procedures, they were kind of invalid just because we
Hmm.
were thrown into such a different situation, right? And then they kind of just they had like a fight or flight mode on, and then you just kind of like fight and block and tackle, kind of operationalize everything in a very different way. So I think we're
Yeah.
just like not prepared for undergoing like these different operational ways, right? I think
Right.
that kind of
And
threw us off the grid.
I think it's actually good that companies got to see how their people are working in a remote environment because for companies that could do this, I mean, it's different from restaurants where you obviously have to have your people there because the whole customer base is there. But when your customers are remote as well, having people work remotely is not a bad thing because look at all the time you're saving them from having to drive back and forth. Look at the stress you're relieving from them from having to sit in traffic, as well as you gave them freedom. When you empower people, you give them freedom and you make them want to work for you because they know that they can have that flexibility, and that they're trusted to do work.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I think I could not agree more with you, because I did see, there were leaders who wanted to kind of look at employees all day long on a video screen just to make sure they're being productive. And that was ridiculous, right?
right. Right. And it's when you have that light on your screen saying whether or not you're connected, for instance on Skype, when that green light's on, it's like you wonder, are people really watching you? Are they keeping track of you? But luckily, the company I support outside of my business, my company is great about it. And I have flexibility, as long as I get done what I need to get done, I have the flexibility and we have the trust. Our whole area in our organization has the trust of each other.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. I think a lot more businesses need to adopt this model to just be able to trust the employees and
Hmm.
kind of be. I think most leaders are stressing on being empathetic in these times, just leading with more empathy, and I
Hmm.
think that really kind of holds true. So I've had a wonderful conversation, Dr. Cindy. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Is there
Well,
anything
thank
else
you.
that you kind of would like to say as just passing remarks?
Well, just, continue to trust your employees, whether or not they're in the office or at home. I don't think there's a rush to get back to the office, and I don't think there's a desire for people to rush to get back in the office. You know, I, it's really about, your customers. If you can support your customers from home and your people work better from home, and, you know, that'll free up a lot of money, I think, for the organization as well, because they won't have to pay for those desks and office spaces.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that is super true. Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy. It was lovely, lovely chatting up with you. Thank you for a great
okay.
conversation. I am sure that our audience is also going to love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.